possible. But Sugandha, if you want
Sure.
to introduce yourself.
I'll come from behind.
Yeah, sorry.
Just so that, no. I just don't want to be behind the table all the time so that I am approachable. But hi, nice to meet you all. I'm Sugandha. My name is hard to say, so I typically tell people Uganda, Sugandha, so that it helps them remember as well as makes it easier to say. I'm a customer engineer, like Lance mentioned. Customer engineers are sales engineers or solution architect in other organizations. Just to make the connection, Google has it different because we do believe in empathy, and hence the name. We don't like to call ourselves sales engineers, we call customer engineer. We are there to solve customers' problem. I am based in the Seattle area. I loved Leilani's comment regarding, technology shouldn't be scary. And I wanted to share just a small story about myself. So before joining Google Cloud, I was actually not working. I had taken a break from work, and I was so scared that being in the technology field, how can I take a break, and how will I ever go back, and nobody's going to take me back. And before Google Cloud, all my work was in data and analytics. And ever since I've joined Google Cloud, it's all a lot of Doc AI, AI ML, which is completely different. So 2 points I want to say: don't be scared to try a new technology. And B, I think Google has done a really good job of making AI ML easier for people to adopt. So it's not only for those who've had a lot of investment in PhDs, nothing against the PhD holders, but I'm just saying that it is a lot more easier to use with Google Cloud. I flew in yesterday, and I'm here for a couple of days. Would be happy to take your questions or anything that you have. For this session, my goal is for you to experience Google Cloud, Doc AI specifically, and then we would play with a few things. Please feel free to stop me, pause me wherever needed, and we will take it the pace that is good for this room. All right. Okay. With that, I just wanted to set back to the agenda. Is this okay, or am I too close to you all? I can step back. Okay. Yeah. First of all, introduction to Doc AI. Why did Google solve for this problem? What are the challenges with Doc AI? So this slide represents what are the challenges when people try and use. Why do people even use Doc AI? A lot of businesses, they get documents that are either in paper or they're scanned, and then there is difficulty reading it, understanding it, and trying to extract that information. And usually when a software does extract it, there is a human who's involved with saying that, did it do a good job? And organizations are thinking, hey, if I'm investing in the technology to extract information, and then there is another human who's sitting and reviewing because the quality isn't good enough, what is the efficiency that I'm gaining, right? So over here, I'm not going to read through each one of these, but basically, number 3 over here is human review. HITL is human in the loop. That's the acronym for that. A lot of times, this point is also significant. A lot of times people, they get a bundle, and a lot of these document types are stacked. So for example, a lot of our mortgage processing customers or banking customers will get a stack of W-2s, W-9s, a driver's license, right? A lot of things are stacked together, and then somebody's manually, if it's a digital copy, they're segregating and saving it as a different file because the software is good at reading a certain type of file and not all types of file. So today we are going to talk about how can we handle that with Google Doc AI. So that's the manual document classification. Handwriting is something that I've seen with customers. They struggle with this a lot, that sometimes a document comes in, something is off, they want to write something on top of that document. So it's a printed document, but then they scratch something, had a number and whatnot, and they want to correct that. That's the handwriting piece. And then obviously there are challenges. Once people extract it, then they're not even using it or analyzing it in the proper way. So those are the key things. Lance, do you want to add?
Yeah, I think maybe just to add on that, I used to work at one of the local companies scanning documents. And so we actually go into these businesses, right? And if you've ever seen it and been there, there'll be maybe the converted mail room where people sit there and there's machines and they have to break apart, take off the staples, break apart the document, feed it through the scanner, oh it jams, and eventually it makes its way onto a screen. Then they're reviewing all the data. And then even then, the documents often go into, like, even though they're electronic, they go into document repositories and other things. And so in some ways the data often still stays trapped there. And so fundamental to all of this is, outside of helping make this process more efficient, once data is in the cloud, it's much easier to manipulate, to build analytics off it, to do other kinds of things, or share it with other systems as well. And so, I think part of this, although I think we're going to focus on a lot of that, the broader picture, and one thing that Sugandha has also helps a lot of our customers with is, so now that we've unlocked this data, let's do some interesting things with it, right? And what can we do? So,
yeah, on the interesting things with it, a lot of time people are interested, like if especially they're processing invoices, they want to know, is it a legit invoice? Did it come from an address that truly exists? So we'll see some dashboards towards the end where we are trying to do sort of fraud detection on invoices. Okay, I usually get invoices, it's for, like, those are the things that analytics can drive once you have that data. That, oh, I typically get invoices for, say, car repair, this service, and it should be in this range, but it's significantly higher. This should get flagged. Either it was a data processing issue or somebody's trying to trick the system. So we'll see and look at that. With regards to, like, what are the building blocks that can help us? Google has 3 building blocks that were built specifically for this problem. Number 1 is general doc AI. So you can think of it as, I would say, the basic service, right, that does what a lot of people in the market do, and it's called extracting the key value pair. It's the OCR that you hear in the market, right? So it's trying to read a blob and trying to detect, okay, this blob is this text, and this text, within this text, this is the key and this is the value. This is the label and this is the value. So that's like table stakes, bare minimum. I would say the Google touch to it is it's simpler to use. So this is something that you do see generally in the market. Number 2 is where Google shines, and that is the specialized doc AI. This is where Google engineers have spent a lot of time saying, we will focus on these set of 50, 100 documents, and we are going to build parsers that are amazing at reading these documents. And those documents are invoices, receipts, driver license. We will see the whole package. It's like a menu that you can choose from. But essentially, that is your specialized document AI. And within this, what is special and what makes Google special is the fact that there is, Google General, the search company, organizes data about businesses, about companies, in a graph called the Google Knowledge Graph, which is, and how I'll share how that ties with specialized doc AI. So for example, I may get an invoice from Sheraton, because I'm staying at Sheraton. So in that, like when I run it through that invoice through the specialized doc AI, it would understand that the supplier or the person that's giving the invoice is Sheraton. But in addition, what the specialized parser will do, it will flag and say, hey, Google knows Sheraton Waikiki, and it would just if the OCR was not able to read it, it's gonna enhance it naturally using Google data without any additional effort from your side. So that is what makes Google shine in the specialized doc AI category. The third is the custom doc AI workbench. We do realize that Google engineers don't have the bandwidth to basically generate parser for everything. So we are giving tools to the organizations that if they have a specific template that does not match the documents that Google has built a parser for, then they can build their own parser. They can just customize it. Like every organization has to deal with some sort of documents that are specific to their organization, and they could leverage the third bullet over there. This is an example of what I was talking about, enrichments and the specialized parser. What we are showing on the screen are 3 driver's licenses, and this is where Google has built a specialized parser. So this one is from California, Texas, New York. As a human, it's very easy for me to know that these are driver licenses. When you send it through a parser, if you notice, this one has LN, FN as acronyms for last name and first name. And this one has 1, 2. By the way, these are synthetic generated driver's licenses, so we're not showing any PII data. So, and then this one, it doesn't even have like a label for first name and last name. So even though, so the first block is showing an OCR. If it was just an OCR, it would extract from these images these texts, right? But won't be able to do anything else. Then a lot of people in the market, they stop here. The next level up is the inferred key value pair. It's trying to say, oh, LN is the key while the value is sample. FN is the key while the value is Alexander. If we left it here, right, then you as a business owner would still have to like write some sort of rules to say LN1, and this is exactly the same thing. It's the first name, right, or the last name. So what we do with the third layer, which is the schematization, we say, since it's a driver's license, it has to have these 6, 7, 8, 10 fields, whatever they are, right? And it has to be in this specific format. So we call this process schematization. And so now, when you process a document, it's always like a fixed table with known columns so that you can act on it easily instead of like trying to figure out or build rules to say like if a new document, driver's license, so say a state changes the driver's license, what would happen? Google engineers will work on it, and you would automatically get the updated specialized parser. So this is specialized parser in action. Not every, like I said, not every parser or doc.ai parser is fancy. This is like the fanciest stuff within the doc.ai suite. Sorry, what?
Oh no, I was just saying like the key value pair and schematization is something that we lack currently in our setup.
Yeah, and so I think a lot of customers, when they bring their own tooling and they like their own documents, then they want this layer, right? And that's where the number 3 that I was showing, the custom workbench, will help fill the gap. So this is just showing at a high level the same architecture diagram that we had earlier, like how does that change within Google. So the first block is showing that the digitized bundle is going and you're uploading it into Google Cloud Storage, which is a blob storage, right? And then we have built something called a splitter. So it would automatically, like a lending splitter. This is showing a lending pipeline. Usually like mortgage banks get like a mortgage package. And what we have is a lending splitter, and we can split it into these forms. And then thereafter, we can then call a document AI API to extract information from each one of those. And it does the enrichment for you. So for example, addresses, Google from Maps, Google knows certain addresses way better than, like there may be a typo and whatnot, so it would autocorrect and say, I know this business is established at this location, so you're probably trying to say that it is this address. So that's the enrichment piece. And then typically what customers do when they extract that data, they put it into BigQuery. Any BigQuery users here in the group? All right, so BigQuery is Google's serverless data warehouse. So basically what we're saying is now we've extracted information. Let's make it actionable. How would we do analytics on it? So we would extract and put information in BigQuery. Once it's in BigQuery, there are 2 options, or maybe more. I am just showing 2 options. You can show visualization through what we call a free product called Data Studio, which has been around before Google Cloud was born. It's a free product. It's a visualization tool. So basically, you can, whatever data you extracted and put in BigQuery, you can now create reports using Data Studio. Or if you've heard, or any Looker users here?
I've heard of it.
Okay, so Looker was its own company, and they built like a really cool, fancy BI tool for the modern age, for the new data warehouses that can handle big data. Basically, it's a visualization tool for the big data capacity. And so Google acquired Looker. So Looker also provides like a visualization layer on top of BigQuery that you can use and say, okay, now my data is in BigQuery. Now I can visualize and create samples. After our break, we will take a look at a sample Data Studio dashboard as well. How is my pace? Am I going too fast? Okay. Okay. All right. So let's get, what I want to do is, now we are entering into, we all have basic knowledge of Doc AI. For today's session, we are going to focus on specialized parsers. I did request your Gmail IDs so that I can give you permission to a sandbox environment. So what I would do is I will send you sample documents, and you can all play along with me in the console. So let's do that. As we go in, what to expect, I will send you copies of this document, which is an invoice parser. It has some handwriting stuff on it, and then we would process it to see how it looks. This is the output. Should have been the other way around, but I figured this was too tall and wasn't messing with my heading, so I just moved it. But yes, on the right, this is your input, that's the output. The G is here. This is the Google magic from the Google Knowledge Graph. So the supplier phone came in like this. Google wants to schematize it and standardize it, so we do a G and we say, oh, the same thing holds for the address. In this case, it's identical. In fact, we've lost some information here, but this is Google's standardization. So anytime you see G, it means it's either has been enriched using Google Knowledge Graph. So with that, I'll pivot, and I think I just don't have your Gmail ID. Do you happen to? And we haven't. Okay. Okay.
Should I, do you want to?
Yeah, if you can give it to me. Yeah. And here's another one, another sample. This is an interesting one. I stained it personally by dropping coffee, just to see how bad image can a parser read. It was pretty bad. It did a pretty good job. Like the total amount. Okay, the total amount over here. It can read. It can even read what I was struggling to read, like 275. So it probably validates like where the information is and how. So that I found pretty neat. This is also cool, like if you look on the supplier name, just using the OCR stuff, it's able to read the supplier name as Guardian, but then because of the knowledge graph, it made it Guardian Asset Management, which is the proper logo. That's the full name, which I find is pretty neat. So there are two enrichments that are happening. One is like enhancing the business name or the addresses. The third kind of enrichment is around dates and currency. We didn't talk about that. We also standardize the date format because it could be like Feb 2nd, 2022, or it could be 02. So it does that as well for you, because that is another thing that once you OCR and once you read something, you have to deal with that as well. And then this is another example where I'm showing, and this is all something that you all would be doing in the console. This is a W9, handwritten W9. We would be processing it right now, today, and then you would see how it's able to extract information, even the SSNs and the name. Obviously, nothing is perfect, so there will be instances. From an AI/ML perspective, nothing can be perfect, and especially for handwritten. Like I can challenge, hey, I have a really bad handwriting. If I write, I bet the software is not going to read. Yes, it's not going to read. So if that's, so it can only read as much as it can read. And it is getting better. The more samples you provide, the better it gets. Let me get away from the slideshow, and let me just share a link with you all. Mm, let's see.
I have a question.
Yeah.
How many languages can this AI handle? I mean, like, if one document has 2 or 3 languages, like
Yeah.
they can detect?
Yes, they can. So it is dependent, this feature is dependent on a parser by parser basis. And what I mean is, for example, I think the driver's license, it can detect X number of languages. So it is dependent on what is your document type. But in general, like from a translation perspective, Google can understand over 50 languages.
Okay.
Let me get to the, okay, so what I have done today is this is my sandbox environment. Let me close this. This is, I am inside my GCP console. I did request your email IDs. And what I am going to do is use your email IDs to give you access to my project. That way we all can be inside my project and we can process the same documents. So you can see how easy, what does that experience look like? And then, yeah, so I'll just add your name. This is awesome. And so each one of you is a DocAI administrator role, so you can do a lot of things, everything that I can do inside of DocAI. All right. And then this is, you're going to receive an email from the SC GCP demo account, which I have created, right? So I'm going to send you 2 things, A, 2 documents, sample documents, and then B, a link that you would click on and it will give you access to the console. So I'm going to send it. Everybody has access to the Wi-Fi here? Yes? Nice. All right. All right. So please check your emails for this, for the link. And when you click on the link, when you get it, you should land here. So I'll wait to make sure that everybody's in and the email has come through. This is too fast. Okay. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Like from a break perspective, I think once we do this, we can take a break.
Yeah.
Okay. And let me know, like, if you're there or not there. Okay, you made it? Okay. If you could download the 2 samples, that is something that we would use to test. Just familiarizing ourselves with the GCP console. This thing on top, the 3 dots on top, this is our project inside of GCP console. This is called the scope selector, this triangle. If your organization is using GCP, you would see the look and feel would be slightly different. You would have like an organization node. So like for me, since this is not an enterprise account, it says no organization. But typically, you would see your company name there, your domain name there. And underneath these 3 hexagons together, that's the project symbol. So what DocAI is my project, and what I'm doing now, and everything inside of GCP starts with a project. Anything that you want to do starts with a GCP project. So what we would do, each one of us would be creating a processor or a parser for W9s, to process W9 and to process an invoice. So if you can click on Explore Processors, it will bring you to this screen. And so within this screen, there is General, which is what we were talking about. Like if you remember the slide that I was mentioning earlier, number 1 is the general document OCR and the form parser. And then the specialized is we have this whole set of cards. So if you can go to the invoice parser, let's try the invoice. Where?
I couldn't get to the Explore processors. Did I have to activate the free trial?
No, it should. So if you click on, I'll take a look. So within Explore processors, essentially we would be going for the invoice. I always miss it. Where is it? It's too big to fit in my. Okay, I'm just gonna.
There are some that have check marks and some that don't. Does that mean anything?
Yes, so some may be privately available. So when you click on it, they may say you have to fill in a request form. Some are generally available. It just depends on where it could. I'm not 100% sure. It could mean that some are privately available. You'll have to fill up a request form, and some you would be allowed listed to use it. For example, the invoice parser, you can give it any name. I typically use my initials and then create like a name. Since region, we can use US, and then basically hit the create button. What that does, it creates like an endpoint for you to work on and upload. Like that's where you can go and test. So for example, I will say SC1 invoice. So at this point, I created a processor. And so just going back, a lot of you have created the parsers. Just click on the parser that you created. So for example, I created this one, invoice parser. And then here you can upload your test document. So like, are we all tracking? Just click on the whole list of parsers that you create. So since we are all in the same project, we are seeing a lot of parsers here. I have created some, we all have created. It may be the case that you tried to create the same name, tried to choose the same name, so it's just confusing to see a lot of invoice parsers. You typically don't need to create as many, but I wanted you to experience like that it's super easy to create a parser. All you need to do is just fill a form, give it a name, and create it. And then each one of them gets assigned an ID. So for example, in this case, this is the ID. So if I am coming in programmatically, then I can sub this ID, and in my Python calls, I can like substitute it, and it would know what ID I'm talking about, which invoice parser I'm talking about. But in a project, it's not typical to have so many invoice parsers. And then we didn't talk about human in the loop. We'll cover it later. But I just wanted to go back to invoice parser. If you scroll down, it has an upload test document. And here, if you could upload the invoice, the Ambrose Advisor PDF that I'd attached in the Gmail, in the email that I had sent out. I'll click open, and it's now starting to analyze this document. Any issues? I'm so sorry. Let me see if I can figure out what's going on. You know what? I may not have given you the right permissions. That's the only thing I can think of. I'll make you the owner and see if that helps. Basic, owner. Is the email address correct here?
Yeah.
It says invitation has been sent pending acceptance. Can you check your email to see? if
I
it,
just got it.
okay, so maybe,
We could tie it to like Google's maps. But then after that, we go for
Okay, I accepted it.
okay, maybe that was it.
Yeah, I never got the invite. Should I
Last
try
time,
the invite?
last time you never got the invite.
No.
Okay. Now give it a try. Maybe you can sign out, sign back in.
Oh, my email?
Yeah. So in this specific invoice, what I wanted to highlight, like for an invoice, it does have a handwritten purchase order and the parser is able to grab it. Any questions?
I have a question about the parsers.
Yeah.
The parsers is basically like, what's another word for parsers?
Processor.
Yeah, okay, processor. So then you can have different ones, like
Mhm.
you can create different ones.
Yes.
In that instance, why would you have different ones?
Yes, so in this case, we don't, like in this case, like I was saying, for invoice parser, we don't necessarily need so many versions, but because I wanted each one of you to go through that experience of creating a parser, we have so many invoice parsers sitting in this project. One other example of why you would have multiple versions is, say I build this parser, but it's not able to read a specific thing really well. Say it's just out of the box what came is not working very well for you, right? It's missing on the invoice date. Or Google thinks that, you know, these 15 fields are important, but you as a business want a 16th field extracted from your invoices, and maybe that's something, right? In that case, you can uptrain your model or your parser and create a different version. And when we create versions, they show up here. So manage versions. So basically, for the same parser, right, I can have different versions. And I can say, OK, this is the baseline version that came out of the box, and I uptrained mine, and now this is the one that will work for my organization. So that's and you can refer to that version when you make that call to say, hey, like, give me the results from the document. Does that make sense, like why we have versions?
Yeah.
OK.
So then would you create another parser if you were all of a sudden having to take all of the invoices that were ever entered in there and have surface up like a particular metric that you're now focused on for one reason or another?
Yeah, so you would run them, like say your format changed. In 2020, there were some fields on the invoice, right? In 2021, you added something, right? But you were not able to build, say, the parser in time, or it took some time for the development or uptraining to happen, right? And so when you create a new version, now you run your documents again through that new version, and it will extract the new field that you want to extract. That's how you would do it. The uptraining process is also very, very easy. And we'll talk about like some of that aspect. Like say everything works except one field where the accuracy is poor, right? So in that case, you can say I have a whole lot of sample documents that I can use to uptrain that specific metric. So you'll say keep everything as is. Just for this specific metric, I will upload my documents. I will draw a box, a bounding box, provide some samples, and you would see a significant shift in the performance. And we've seen customers do that. However, that specific feature is in private preview. What that means, like just going back to the versions, there is generally available. That means it's available to everyone. So if you this is a public-facing website, right? And I'm showing these are the different processors we have. There are certain features that are not generally available, as in they're not available to the public. They are in private preview. So what that means is the product wants to just accept a handful of customers and want them to test that product and provide feedback, and then they will open it for a preview, like a broader preview. So just like from a nomenclature perspective, Google calls it private preview, which is like a private event party. Like, oh, this party is for X number of folks. We would open it, we would test the product, and then we would take their feedback and then launch it for public preview and then make it generally available for everybody. So the up-training feature is in private preview. As a Googler, I do have access to it. And then for your use case, we can work with the product team to allow list you all and expand or make sure that it's available to you as well.
We've had some customers here in Hawaii that have been approved for private preview, and the benefit of having Sugandha here is she's tied very closely with our product team. So we've been able to get sort of the latest and greatest from Google to businesses here in Hawaii. You just let us know and we can work with you on that.
So you mean that when you say private preview, it's like you have to work with the Google team, and then with only that some limited access you can.
Yeah.
Once you get the limited access, then you'll have access just as if it was a regular product, but it just needs that extra step of approval.
Okay.
And I can show what that looks like. I think so. Let's see. I think like what that sort of feels like. So, for example, when you would click on a certain tile, it says this isn't private. Like you'll have to request access. And when you request access, it would open up a Google form where you can provide information. What's your company name? Who are you trying to solve this problem for? What's the volume like? And what that does is it submits a form on your behalf to the product team that says, hey, I want access to this. Can you allow list me? So what it does is whatever Gmail account or your account, organization account that you use, they will allow list for you to use it. And it would open up to you. And then if you're not getting access to it, feel free to reach out to me and I can ping the person who got this form and then make sure that, what are the hurdles, why is it not happening? We can make that happen for you. To your point about languages, here, there's a France driver's license, there's a France passport, like you were asking, right? What languages we can handle. For specialized parsers, we are building things that are specific to languages. But in the OCR and the AutoML side of Google Cloud, we do have language detection for broader languages. Is there a specific?
Have you seen any Japanese?
That's what I was asking. For sure, Google Translate handles Japanese. Yeah.
Anecdotally, I've heard, some of the translation isn't always the best, right? That it's been improving over time, specifically in Japanese.
Translating English to Japanese is way easier than vice versa because it's just a language structure. Yeah. So that's something I kind of like how it's going to be accurate, especially because I have a lot of English documents that my clients need to translate, and then anytime I really have to do everything versus I can use a Google Translate.
Oh, so are those PDF documents? Like big documents, like multi-page documents, you're having to translate from.
Yeah.
Okay, so we do have a product called Translation Hub that is specifically built for not just translating word for word. It will understand the context of the document and would try and convert from English to Japanese. I think you should give it a try. We can I am connected with the PM there. We can have you try the Translation Hub. Also, I think sometimes the same word can have different meanings in different languages. Obviously, for the English, if I'm trying to translate, I speak Hindi. So from English to Hindi, the same word can have different meanings. As long as I don't have the context, it would be a wrong translation. So we provide something called a glossary. What it does is it contains the domain, and it says this is financial domain. So if you hear this word in this domain, it's it should mean this. It's it will improve the performance of your translated stuff. So you could leverage something like that. That is, there's under AutoML, there's AutoML Translate, where you can upload these dictionaries and we call them glossaries, so that then the translation is better. Those would
that is can be integrated with this AI document, which meaning, let's say I have this, I don't know, tax format from both language, and I want to kind of, organize all the information data to only in English because of my employees are all English speaker.
Right.
Like, can you do
Yeah,
that?
yeah. It'll have to be plugged in. Like we'll have to create like an architecture. Like how would this flow in? What are the inputs? What would be the outputs? But yeah, we can put together a reference architecture to say how would this whole thing flow. All right. Did that fix the issue for you? Like, were you able to refresh your access?
But I have a lot of stuff on there now. I think I have your, I don't know where I need to go. I have the full dashboard.
You have the full dashboard. Did you click on the link?
Yeah, I just done it.
Okay.
So I just didn't know where on the dashboard I needed to be.
Yeah. Now we can just say on top, document AI, just search. So one of the cool things about like GCP is that there does have like on the top a search bar, which makes like sometimes there are a lot of products and you don't know where you want to go. Just search on top. The search bar is what I typically use, and Google is, yeah, this is it. You are processors. Yeah, okay, sorry. Explore. Now you can create your own process. Scroll down, you can create your own processor. That is the piece that was missing, probably. All right. We can try and create a new parser if that's of interest. Let's create a W9 parser, and the other document that I sent is a W9, so we can do this, follow the same motion. Essentially, go in, create a parser. This time choose W9. W9. Let's see. Overview, explore processors. This is a W9 parser. So select it, give it a name. Probably if you want to, you can give in some of your initials so that you can determine which one is yours. So SC W9 test is how I create it. And then hit create. And then once you create it, it would bring you to this page, processor details, and upload test document. And I'd shared with you all another sample document. Let's see. I think it said 35 something, 35A PDF. I'm trying to just get to it myself. So all right.
I think it's 035.
Yeah. Maybe I can just download it. That's easier. So this 35035A, if you download it, right, you can then upload that, and then you'd be able to process it. Let me upload it. Upload test document, download, open. So, yes.
So as the parsers say parsing these handwritten entries, does it show like its confidence level?
It does.
Or so we know?
Yeah, it does. That's a really good question. It does display a confidence score, though it's not in this UI. So, like, this is a way for you to experience without being programmatic. But obviously, when you're trying to process a lot of documents, this is not how you would process it. So we do have like a notebook that we've placed on GitHub. that you can download, and then you can just make these calls. And I just wanted to show that I have it. So I would share the links with all of you. This is like a Jupyter notebook. I'm inside Doc.ai, where we are inside a Jupyter notebook. And what I'm doing here is, if you see, like my project ID is specified, my processor ID is specified, and I'm going to run it to say, give me the score, and then it's going to process this specific, let me run it. I just thought that would be too much for all of us to step through the Jupyter notebook for this session. But essentially what I'm doing is this whole code is available to you all. And essentially what we are doing here is making a call to the API, and it's processing a specific invoice, and it's going to spit out the column name, the value, and the confidence score. It does show a lot. Like in the output is actually a JSON, and there is a lot more. There's also bounding boxes. There's a lot of location things that you can use, or also like normalized value, like the G value and the original value, because sometimes businesses like, yes, it's good that Google is doing the enrichment, but I don't care. I need my original value. So we do return that, and you can either pick up the normalized value or pick up the raw value. So this is like, I just processed a document right now, and now it's showing the confidence score on each one of those. And it would have made sense for me to show the invoice first, but this is the invoice that I processed. So I processed this invoice right now, and in the notebook, I just am spitting it out in a table instead of putting it into BigQuery. Another way would be to, like, again, if you have it in your notebook, you can't do anything, you can't take it further unless you store it somewhere. So we typically recommend that once you extract that data, store it in BigQuery, and that's how you would like move forward with your process. So so in this case, I've created inside, like I said, BigQuery is our serverless data warehouse. So in that, there is this concept of data set and tables. So extracted entities is my table, and I've created a table with the schema that the invoice parser returns. And I've processed a couple invoices, and all those invoices, their input file name, the currency, the due date, the amount is all being now dumped into BigQuery. Does that make sense? Any questions?
You mentioned bounding boxes, and so right now I'm actually kind of managing like a small labeling annotation team. And something that we don't currently have is a pipeline or a framework to happen, like maybe if they could draw bounding boxes themselves.
Yeah.
Right now they're just scrolling page after page after page to look for certain text values
Right.
to review.
Yeah.
And Google I know there's somewhat of a structure in place, but I don't think our team has fully explored what's available to implement something like that.
Yeah. So there are two offerings there. You can say, I don't want to deal with labelers, and I would use Google labelers. So Google can do that. A lot of that had restrictions during COVID because there has to be a green room. People had to come in office. So that offering was on a pause because of COVID, rightly so. And now I think that may have opened up. The other would be like if you have your own labelers and they just need a neat infrastructure, we do provide a way for you to draw bounding boxes. However, like I think there were two versions of it. The one that I love and I would recommend for your team would be the custom workbench, which is like the private preview, because there the product is much more slicker. Like it maintains the spatial awareness. So for example, things like as it reads the document doesn't mess up with how the document looks, and then basically as the labelers, they draw boxes, it does a good job of extracting them out. Now switching back to the slide. I think we covered specialized parsers. We talked about W9s. We talked about how we can, like the whole menu that you saw, those boxes, those are our specialized parsers. And if you don't have access, feel free to click on it and then request access. It would send an email. And then in addition, if you want and somebody's not taking an action, please send me an email and I will, and I'll share my email. My email is in the deck, both, so I'll share that with you all. But yes. So we were all able to extract W9s. And this, I do have this sample, but since this is not my invoice, that's why I didn't attach and send it to you all. It does work, I can show it. It's just that I cannot send it and attach and send it to you in an email. This was personally stained by my daughter and myself. I was like, how bad can we make it? And it can still do, it can still like read. It does a pretty good job. With regards to the notebook that I was showing you, I will share this deck. So you would have access to the GitHub repo where the notebook is set up. I have two options here, async and sync. So as you run DocAI API, we provide you two options. Async is the one where you say, I have these 15 documents, process it, and let me know when the processing is done. Like it's a big document, I don't want to be waiting for the response to come back. Those are called long-running operations. You basically kick off the doc AI process, and then it comes back to you. Sync is when you have a small document, and there's definition of small, like in terms of MB and KB, I just don't remember it. But basically, if it's a small enough document, you can do a sync call, and basically you would get the result back then and there. The one that I showed in my notebook, where it returned a table, that was a sync call. Basically, I ran the DocAI API, gave me the results then and there, and I was showing to you in a table in the notebook itself. And then I've also included a link to the code lab for those who are not familiar with code lab. The exact set of process that we are doing here, right? But with more steps, more holistic, is included in this code lab. So when you have access, like in this case, what I did for you all, I set up the account, I enabled a few APIs, I set up billing. I didn't want all of us to go through that process during this session because it's not valuable. And there is a code lab that you can follow that will walk you through that entire process. So essentially, it's going through the process of how would you extract information. This is the code, you can use it. And it also shows how it extracts written form. It also has a few samples. You can run this on your own outside of this lab. So wanted to share. So these are the links. And then this is just a snippet from my notebook that, what do you have to plug in for the notebook to work? This is showing an example of like the data being in BigQuery. We saw that already. I have included some screenshots in the slideshow so that when you look at those, you would remember like what we covered in the lab, like in this session today. But essentially, all it's showing is the data as it extracted, a table, so you can remember that, oh yes, she talked about putting things in BigQuery so that you can do further analytics on it. We're on to our break.
I have a question. I may have missed it on the tutorial, but after we parsed it, how did we get that into a BigQuery table?
Yeah, so after you parse it, there are certain like you have to install BQ client. You have to create, yeah.
We didn't go through that.
We didn't go through that, yes. So the entire set of steps are in the notebook. The notebook, I think, so there are actually many versions of the notebook, but the one that I have linked here, it only shows sync and async calls. I can share another version with you if you're interested, like how would it write to BigQuery? I have those are my created copies of that notebook, because typically you want people to land it into BigQuery, and that's when you act on it. And that's what I've done for other customers, that I would extract that information, put it in BigQuery, and then I've built some dashboards on top of it. Does that make sense? Yeah, I didn't show it. We wanted to keep it consumable as well as interesting. I hope It's decent. Okay, cool.
How do we convince Google to make different processors? Standardized processors?
So,
Parsers.
yeah.
Excuse me, parsers. Yeah.
You call them processor parsers. I understand. I also use them interchangeably. I think it's the way to convince Google is to bring a business case and say, this is my customer, this is the volume. You would use Lance to feed that information to Lance, and then Lance and I would be chasing the PMs to say, it's a big enough problem, it would solve, and we do have a team within Google that's called the Value Advisor team that does a good job of converting those numbers into financial numbers. Or oh, this would save X number of hours, this would save, it would shorten the life, this process currently takes a month, we can do it in a week. And so this would save X number of dollars. So that kind of conversion helps build our case. And obviously, if that's a problem faced by many enterprises, it definitely helps. Yeah, for sure.
And so I wanted to ask you more, business-wise, for just generally speaking. So you described upfront about how the old way of doing this function in an accounts payable or a finance department. So with this product, what would the day of that employee look like? Because now it's higher value task as opposed to what you were saying. So what would it look like?
So and Sugandha and I did this for our clients. So I can tell you a couple things. I think at a very high level, one of the main benefits is significantly driving down the amount of human interaction required. So originally, like we mentioned, if you're doing it the more traditional way of scanning the documents, someone's manually sitting there, they get these documents, they got to take out the staple and then split the documents, and they'll spend a lot of hours just even putting maybe a cover sheet on top to say, okay, this one is this kind of document, and then they feed it to the scanner, right? So that step alone, businesses today are probably either hiring people to do that or they're outsourcing it to a company, and so they're paying another company to do all those functions. And in our example, if you had it properly trained and everything, you would just keep the bundle, feed it in, and you're off and running. So you've eliminated all that manual steps. Once the document is in there, the other thing that takes a lot of manual processing still, even though you're electronically processing these documents, is the review of that data. So handwritten stuff, actually when we did handwritten invoices, reading the data off, it was, in the 80% range or something like that. It was actually handwriting and using Google's tools to read handwriting is actually performs a lot better than even some of the data reading like dates and other things, because dates can be surprisingly complicated. But the net result of all of that is when the values and the error rates get low enough, a person has to go in and review. And so when you start getting down into the 50-40% range of collecting it, then it basically forces a person to sit there and review all the documents coming through. And so now, even though you've scanned everything, everyone's still sitting there reviewing every single document anyway, which kind of defeats the purpose of it being electronic. And so by using some of these technologies, like the knowledge graph and other things, you get the accuracy rate high up enough that, again, you can get people out of the loop and you can have much higher confidence that you can pass all these documents through in an automated fashion and just have a small subset of documents left that people are reviewing. And so those steps, it doesn't sound that big, but when you're talking about thousands and thousands of documents and hundreds of man hours, the costs really add up. So that's really the big difference there.
If you guys have any other case studies besides W-9 or those kind of legal documents or finance documents, 'cause
To me, I mean, especially like, I'm kind of like, have a lot of business in Japan and then, or here.
Yeah.
And the problem is double nine, using the legal document is relatively easy, even we use the human resources to input, because we know what is this, right? It's like,
Right.
this is a name, this is a name, this is
Yeah.
a number, this is a number.
Yeah.
But like sometimes like, do you have any case study those like other small medium businesses use your product and then improve any efficiency or productivity or executive decision making?
Yeah, I mean, you know, when the volume is really small, or like, you know, like we really have to understand the specific case or example to your point, because yeah, in some cases, right, like when, if you are just a small business person and like you're gonna hire an employee, and so you only hire an employee once a quarter, and so you sit there and you type it in, it's not that big an impact for you. But anytime you start getting to a reasonable amount of size, the big challenge you have often with manually keying in is even that introduces a number of errors usually, right? And so what's the cost of, you know, like if an invoice is off by a few numbers, it could potentially cause a lot of problems for you. If, you know, it's just maybe I typed in the name wrong or whatever, maybe not that big a deal. But I think overall, for a lot of these cases, typically we are generally looking at higher volume document cases where just in general, manual review of them just become impractical, right? So it usually implies that you need some scale to the problem for it to be useful. But there may be other use cases where, you know, the automation and the computer's ability to read things kind of just help solve some problems that may not make sense for a person manually sitting there. It's just off the top of my head, you know, in general, I think it's usually, again, when there's any kind of volume associated with the documents, then the manual review usually it just takes too long.
I would just add +1 to that, like volume is needed, because even if like Google has not built anything for you and you want to build your own parser processor, whatever you want to call it, you still need volume to be able to train the model, to test the model, and then for it to work. And you need like that, if that document varies in format, the more examples you get, the better outcomes you will have. So just sharing an anecdote, like when this DocAI product was newer, Google was trying to solve, like there are harder documents like insurance documents or reading coverage policies and trying to understand, like it won't even say coverage start date and end date, but it would say, like a human understands it because it says the policy starts to this, right? But every insurance provider is providing that information in a different template. We had built like something, a version of the model, and then they were asking Googlers to like obfuscate their PII information and upload a few, like if we want to like volunteer and share our personal documents with the product team so that they can test how the model has performed. And a lot of like home insurance documents, like we have that, or mortgage documents, they have a lot of PII information. So we obfuscated that, and then a lot of people contributed to the product development in a fashion that okay, let's provide some volume to it. So harder documents can be handled. We do require volume. There have been instances where a customer was trying to understand, is hazard insurance covered in this like blob of document? And they were like blobby, like unstructured to the core, nothing like a W2, W9, not a form, so hard to read. But what that means is then the labeling is hard. Somebody has to go in and for the first set of 100, 200 documents, go and label those documents and say, okay, this is how we identify if there is hazard insurance coverage or not on this property, on this policy. So it can be done, but it does require volume. And like there are tools that you can use to build your own processor. It just requires volume.
What could be the good data that we can gain from this kind of volume? I what it means, like, you know, those kind of insurance information, the individual information from like a finance or mortgage, I know it could be useful.
Yeah.
But then if you're kind of thinking about like hotel business here,
Well,
service business here.
like for a lot of companies, and it's been particularly surprising, right? Like even basic analytics, like how many documents are we getting? Like, oh, where, like, let's say someone, you know, like in Hawaii, right, when you turn in your form, you know, on the plane, right? Like I'm sure there's all that information in there, but there's, you know, and I don't know exactly what the state or, you know, the organization that does it, but for a company, oftentimes the lag between when all these forms are being collected to when executives or business people are actually understanding, well, who filled out the forms, where are they all coming from, are we seeing any changes in them, right? Like that if the lag is 1 month, well, by the time you got that information, it kind of defeats the purpose, right? So the other benefit to this is how quickly they can get information so that they can react to it. And if there's value in that, then, you know, sometimes, so the example that we had talked about, like if all of a sudden, you know, like you see invoices, you know, the values starting, like we're in a high inflation environment, all of a sudden you see all your invoice, you know, levels rising, they probably want that information to know how much and how quickly, and, you know, now financially we have to go start doing things because of that, right? But depending on the department and the information in there, there's some usually also value in how quickly you can get that information to the right people, which is partly why we're going to also talk about building, you know, reports and building the analytics off this, because usually what we've seen, even in these old, more traditional cases, like they scan the information off the documents, and then it goes into this repository. So even though it's in electronic form, it's still sitting there, and a report hasn't been built. And then to build a report, it's, you know, it can be challenging or difficult because it's in these local, you know, scanning stations as opposed to sitting in the cloud, and so it makes it hard to get the information to the specific business executive who can take action on it. Right? So I think that's one of the, you know, hopefully one of the benefits that cloud can provide is helping to really cut down that time to get the information to the right people.
One other example that I have seen, one of my customers used it for, was like, we get a lot of invoices. We want to know, like before we say, yes, we will, you know, give this money because we got that invoice, is this invoice in the ballpark, right? Like typically, so like somebody mowed their lawn, and we know that, you know, it should be in this range. But if like somebody's trying to trick the system and set $1,000 on that invoice, we're not blessing that invoice payment, and it gets flagged because of analytics, real-time analytics, and saying that, okay, we processed, the invoice came in, it was a paper invoice, it was digitized, then it went into a bucket where it said, this doesn't seem right, so flag it, so then somebody can manually review and then say, okay, yes, this needs to go through. So it can help save companies cost. Or it might be coming from a company that's not a real business. And again, expanding on like the real business of real definition, like sometimes Google may not know of a business that you work with, right? It's a mom and pop shop. Google doesn't know about it. It's not big enough to be registered with Google, right? But you as an organization know that, you know, you receive a lot of invoices from them. So you can then say that I would enrich like the Google Knowledge Graph with my knowledge of my business, and that's called Enterprise Knowledge Graph, which is like you saying, Google knows about X businesses and probably the big names, but I as a business owner know about these small shops that I work with, and I don't want them to get flagged because, you know, they are legit businesses. So that's another way of enhancing and saying that, hey, let's override what Google is saying because I know more about my business than Google does, which is rightfully so, right? So that's another way of using it to improve or reduce the human review, and then you can use that person somewhere else for something more meaningful. So we left off at our break, obviously. Now we are going to talk about dashboards. We were talking about how to make this data actionable and how do you visualize it. What I have here is like a screenshot from a dashboard that I created for one of my customers. Basically, they process mortgage packages, and they had set up like a pipeline that said, okay, when I get a mortgage package, how would it move through the pipeline, right? What would happen? So here it's just showing like 819 documents came through the pipeline. Of those, X were W-2s, Y were W-9s, Form 944, Form 941. So, and then obviously a bundle can have a lot of documents that the parser doesn't know what it is, so we'll put it in the bucket of others. So that's what the others is all about. In addition, like what I'm showing here, like with regards to employer verified and employee address verified, what you can do is you can hook up calls to Google Maps and say, hey, was I able to verify and validate that address against Google Maps, or did it return a normalized value? If it returns a normalized value, that's very much similar to the value that's in the raw stream, then you can say that, I know this address exists, or I know this business exists and is registered with Google Business. So that's what the employer and employee address verified blocks represent here. Let me skip out of the slide mode, and I'll show the real dashboard. This is again showing on the map, like if the application came in, where were the employers? I'm just showing it on the map. And then the tabular view is showing that, oh, these W-2s came in, but the employee, either the name couldn't be verified or the address couldn't be verified. So somebody can click in those W-2s and see, oh, what's going on there. This is more about like flagging. Once you have that data, whether if it was invoices, if you have that data, you want that data to be validated and somebody to take action on it in a timely fashion. Let me bring the dashboard here. So this is the dashboard. And then what I've done is, I need my key, security key, to be able to go to that page. Let me get that. But essentially, if I click on that item, it's going to show me the image of the document that it processed. So basically, once you have these insights extracted, you're saying, hey, what happened? I want to look at the document where this information came through. So as I click on this specific document, I've just linked it to the original image that we use to process this document. Hopefully this should fix it. If not, you get the idea. Like if you process any image, any document, right, you can link it in the dashboard and say, hey, this is the flagged document and this is the associated image. Let's see. Oh, it does. So this is like the W-2 that was processed, and so when I clicked on it, or let me click at the other one, then it's just showing the linked W-2 which was processed. Again, and this is also like just a way of showing that even though this is like a free tool, you can, as long as you have, since you were able to extract addresses, you pass it to Data Studio, it knows that it is US addresses, it's already zooming in to that specific area where your addresses are. So people can say that, oh, I'm getting X number of applications, they are heavily like in this specific area. For Hawaii, you would see where you could zoom in and just say that, okay, from within this area, where are they focused on? You'd still be able to see some sort of geographical trend, so to speak. That's the purpose of having this in here. That's pretty much the dashboard part. Are we okay?
Well, just tying in to kind of what she was saying, like typically, right, like if someone was scanning documents, oftentimes, or like an invoice, for example, it would go into like a financial or ERP system, right? So you can imagine if you had to build out a report like this in Oracle or SAP or something, I mean, you're talking probably a very expensive project, take quite a while to do, right? And, whereas in this case, again, we haven't even touched that yet, right? Like this is all residing outside, and this tool that she used, Data Studio, to build it is free. Outside of, you need someone who knows Data Studio, but I'll say it's relatively or technically fairly easy to pick up and use. And so from the standpoint of maybe even a small to medium business, if they were looking to get some of these capabilities but didn't want to invest in a big financial system or anything like that, or software package, this is a much lighter, easier way to get some insights into your documents and into the things that your business is processing without, again, with fairly light load. And from a cost side, most of the way all these get billed basically is for the most part is per document, right? I mean, there's variations like per page or whatever, but all of this is consumption based, right? So you're not like, oh, I gotta pay $30,000 for a software license and 20% on that every year and maintain it and do these upgrades and everything. It's all running in the cloud. I load all this up, and then it's gonna sit there as I count, scan pages or count documents, then it'll bill me, cents or, per page or something like that. And so it's kind of really changes the cost profile for a lot of folks using this too. So I think what we've seen is cost can come down significantly using this technology.
One other thing, like adding on to Data Studio, I just went to Data Studio. Data Studio is a free product, and I clicked on the Create button, create a report, and now you can see I have connectors, Google connectors. I can connect to Google Ads. I can connect to BigQuery if there is data. Say you process something, a whole lot of documents. Those documents are sitting in BigQuery, right? And you also have some sort of rules that businesses are changing, and they are, say, in a sheet or in a CSV format. You can marry them together in this dashboard. You can have those rules be sitting in Google Sheets, where business users go in and say, oh, acronym LM is this, right? Or acronym ABC is this. And tomorrow I'll have a new acronym. So that can be like an interface for your customers to add data from the Google Sheet perspective, and then your documents will start to flow in BigQuery, and then you can marry them in the Data Studio report, which is free. So you can create data sources here, which would be a BigQuery data source or a Google Sheet data source, and then on top you would be adding a table or a pie chart or whatever. Just also a disclaimer: don't expect Data Studio to have this all sort of features that paid tools would have. It isn't a paid tool, and if you need those premium features, there's Looker and there are other tools that you could use, but this is a quick way to get some data out, some visualization instead of not, and so it's not heavy lift. With regards to resources, I would say this Data Studio product has been around for a really long time, even before Google Cloud. So it is a mature product in the sense that a lot of people use it. A lot of people use it from marketeers know a lot about it because they are familiar with Google Marketing Platform, Campaign Manager. So anybody who's using Google on the ads ecosystem side, they probably know about this too. So there are a lot of blogs. If I myself was trying to understand how do I create this map, I searched and I found a nice tutorial on how to do it. So it's not super hard, but also don't expect it to be a Ferrari. What else? Not this.
Sorry, I forgot to ask in the first session, but maybe a stupid question, but
how would scan, like, you know, if I have a company and I have tons of like hard copy printed,
Yeah.
and then they said, oh, this is a great idea.
Right.
And what's the starting point? Should I buy the equipment scanning, or
Yeah,
what
so
would you recommend?
typically, like, I mean, desktop scanners right now run, they're probably even under $1,000, right? Like,
Yeah.
or a lot of copiers even have scanning capability built in, right? But, so they can be fairly inexpensive, but as a business, usually as you start getting a little more into the more enterprise versions of those, you know, the scanners don't jam as much, they have better capabilities in cleaning up the documents so the images come out cleaner and nicer, and you know, like they don't have as many of the issues that you might have with just a pure consumer grade solution. A lot of that will also depend on volume, so some scanners are rated to run at approximately certain rates, and then so the more expensive ones can handle bigger documents and send them through faster. But basically, I think for most folks today, they usually either come out in, you know, like a JPEG format or a PDF
PDFs,
format. Right?
yeah.
And PDFs become the de facto standard for a lot of folks, right? And so once it gets into that format, what we were talking about here is you can just load those up into cloud, right, into cloud storage and do all the same stuff that we were doing. They're scanning solutions, and I don't know, you know, when I was in that field, it was about 10 years ago, but I'm assuming there's similar players, but like Kofax, and there's some others that make scanning software. And so you plug in the scanner to a PC, it stores it on that local disk. But for businesses now, what ends up happening is, well, I scanned all the documents, it's sitting on that hard drive, like what if that gets stolen, or the room catches on fire, or like, you know, the PC itself breaks, now I've lost all my documents, right? And so even having it in electronic format, a lot of businesses need to make sure those get exported to the right places and uploaded and stored and backed up, and typically that's in cloud now as well. So if you can just make the jump straight to there, then I think even better.
So usually you guys recommend for the company to research about those like hard.
Yeah. And
Then
I
you
mean,
guys have some any recommendation or?
I think Google itself, I don't know if we've done it, but most of that stuff is like, you can find all that stuff online, and you know, like.
Also, it
Fujitsu
exists,
and-
right?
Yeah,
Like people have already invested in that technology, so we don't want to change that part of the
Yeah.
investment. Like they already have contracts, they already have that investment. What we're suggesting is to take that forward and say, don't leave it scanned there on the drive. How do
Get
you
it up in the cloud.
put it up in the cloud, work on it, act on it, make it actionable, is where we can come in and help.
Yeah.
And then this cloud able to handle both PDF and JPEG?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. One other thing I think begs clarification, and I think we didn't say it very clearly. When we're talking about volumes, right? I just want to make sure that for the volumes, you can process, like even if you have 50 invoices, you can process. There's nothing stopping you from processing 50 invoices. If you're a small, medium-sized business, we're not making it hard for you to process invoices if it's less volume. Volume is required when you're trying to handle a new document, like when you're trying to read a net new document. And again, we're not talking about 10,000, 5,000 documents. I have been able to uptrain start with 100, 200 documents. So you can start with a smaller number. I just want to make sure that we're not putting any limitation for any small or medium sized business to not use the invoice parser. I think that wasn't clear when we had that break. I was talking and Lilani mentioned that, hey, I'm using it in voice, so I said, yes, you can. There is no limitation that you have to bring 100 invoices to be able to use it. So there's no entry barrier there, so to speak. Does that make sense? Okay.
I think typically when you start up training or trying to build any custom type of parsers or have it read certain fields to try and improve performance, I think, you know, there's a recommended number to start to really let the Google AI side of it train well, and they want, what was it, like 200-ish
Yes.
of different documents so that it understands all the variations and then it can recognize it. But even on that side, we've done some as low as 25, and it
Yeah.
still came out pretty good. The engineer's probably like, hey, you only gave us 25, we want way more than that. But, you know, I think, again, as long as, you know, you're being careful about making sure and monitoring sort of the outputs and seeing how it performs, then you can still do it with less. It's not necessarily recommended, but I think we've seen performance be pretty good even with a relatively small amount of documents for it to train it up.
I think from a like language perspective, the terms that we are using, right? There are two things that can help if specialized parsers are not there, right? Like if you're not getting the accuracy that you need from specialized parsers as they exist, and then what can you do? You can uptrain them. You can make them better by saying, hey, you know, everything works, but this field, it's not doing. I want the threshold or the accuracy to be higher on that, so I will uptrain it. I'll make it better, and that process is on the roadmap. Does require allow listing, as I shared. The other thing is you have a net new document. That's like custom doc workbench. That is also something that we can do, but then that requires more number of samples. Yeah. I think with regards to like the dashboard and the content, we are good, Vince. Like there isn't, like should we go deeper into the like workbench aspect or?
I don't know, maybe like for you guys, is there any specific areas that you guys, and I know you guys are doing some .ai projects, but just in general, you know, I don't know if there's anything in particular you'd like to see or that we can help answer questions for.
Well, as far as the products go, the workbench stuff.
I've only done, so I've explored the documentation, and I had another Google workshop remotely. It was more so on Vertex AI,
Okay.
video ML, auto ML, but from what I've ingested so far, I think our specific issues are we would need a custom parser because the documents we're dealing with have historical changes over time.
Okay.
So the formats have changed over time.
Got
And
it.
different contractors use different formats. It's not standardized, which is
Okay.
a hard part.
They're long-running as-built for
These
school
are
facilities
basically,
across the state.
construction schematics.
I see.
Construction industry.
Okay.
So it's a bit of a more of an intelligent document processing problem
Mhm.
because it's not a straightforward text. It needs to recognize tables,
Oh yeah.
locations of tables.
Yeah. A
And
lot of our
then-
parsers do. Form parser can do table
Yeah.
recognition. Are you
So,
using? Yeah.
Yeah, our problem is that the location of tables changes in the PDF.
In the PDF. Have you
And-
tried to use the form parser? It's really good at like this specific.
So I think June, when I started the project, they had already gone through, I know he talked about parsers, the person who I inherited this
Right.
project on. He talked about they tried using the form parser, but I'm not sure what
The outcomes.
specifics they tried.
Okay. Yeah.
Um,
So I would recommend using the form parser on the table structure. And again, the other thing from scratch would be like something like the custom doc extractor, these
Yeah.
you typically don't see. Because I am in the private preview, I have access to it. But we would be launching this for like,
Something else we're actually dealing with, so I know a lot of, it seems like some of, at least, products that I've had exposure to with
Right.
We have specific issues with the text that's kind of unique because I guess architects, they tend to draw these ruler type of horizontal lines and the granularity, sometimes it's really intense, sometimes it's very sparse.
Right.
But I know that the person that I heard in this project from said that they couldn't get good text extraction because all of these horizontal lines keep on.
I see.
Yeah, so I was thinking we would need to add more training data for just those specific letters, but I don't know if you think that
Yeah.
would be worth it or not.
I think what we could do is do like a follow-on to see like where the specific samples, where are you seeing the issues? We can have like a follow-up call to see. Samples do help, but if the processor is not going to like handle the kind of document that you are passing to it, then we may need like a new processor or parser to be created from scratch, just because this document is like significantly different from what you have. That you have to build your own.
It's very
What's the
intense.
volume like?
Oh,
This is as-built drawings for every school in the state going back to the 1900s.
yeah, so these are like, every time they need to fix a door, every time they need to upgrade the lights, they need to paint a wall, they have to create these new schematics and have these submitted to the state for funding.
Oh, okay.
And so, like, I just have like a small snapshot of like,
So it would be a huge statewide
But
problem.
they
right?
have-
We're talking about the DOE
it would be the entire state, basically, the entire public school system going back to the 20s.
facilities.
Yeah, which is one of the largest in the country, public school systems, right?
Sounds like we got a candidate.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, like,
Yeah.
so I have noticed they have certain standardizations. But, you know, I'm sure this is a general, like, Autodesk or a CAD, like, this is a
Yeah.
construction industry
I was also
issue.
thinking like from
In
an
general,
right.
it's a big construction industry issue because a lot of contractors just relied on paper over the decades.
Yeah.
And, you know, we can see it, you know, remember this, drawer, number this, like it's, and, you know, like, I don't know how, so yeah, we have like access, currently have access to like a chunk of their Dropbox section, and we just started trying to download new folders, and it's so fast. Like a subfolder and a subfolder and a subfolder is like 400 gigabytes.
Oh my goodness. Okay. I mean, what we can do is we can also connect with people who are focused on that industry, like CEs that are aligned, that are focusing on that industry, to see how they're solving for that with other customers.
Yeah, like I don't know how the industry deals with it, and I'm
Yeah.
sure that there are different.
I gotta believe we have some, I mean,
Yeah.
the AEC industry in general is huge, so I
Right.
gotta believe we have someone within Google that's.
Yeah,
thought
that
about
is,
this.
yeah, thought about this, right? Yeah.
Yeah, just generally they're called as-built drawings.
Yeah,
Yeah, at drawings
Yeah.
is like, it's like the worst thing to search in Google because it's too generic for drawing.
yeah, you just get too
But
many
this
hits,
is,
right?
Like, yeah, too many hits, and like, I mean, I was like, okay, well, I mean, Autodesk actually has an article describing as-built drawings, so I'm guessing if Autodesk is calling it this, it must be the standard industry term.
Got
But
it.
the way that they appear is so varied.
But we can, you know, we can take this issue, like, work on it offline, and then, between us and then the public sector team, so, Daniel and Amanda, and I think it's Jen now, we can coordinate with them. I think ultimately it'll get back to the product team, right? And so, Sugandha can help make some connections there, and then we can look for resources to try and help fix this. But I think in general, and I know we're trying to do a follow-up meeting with eWorld as well, but just helping you guys understand that between the custom training and some of these other capabilities, we weren't sure
Yeah.
that you guys were aware of that, and so we
I
wanted to make people.
I'm not sure as well, like, so when I talked to Joel, or I haven't talked to Steve much about it, but I think there, just in the industry in general, there's a little confusion between the differences between OCR versus image recognition versus computer
Yes.
vision versus
Yes.
image processing.
Yeah.
These are all very different problems,
Yes,
which I have learned, and just because it says OCR in the description of the product name does not mean it will fit our needs at all. Which is, yeah, and like, I'm not PhD or even a master's student, I'm only like the data enthusiast. Because Hawaii's very far behind in terms of the higher education offerings for classes like this for undergrads. So a lot of my struggles are just more from self-teaching, and I don't know what I don't know.
Sure.
So there are definitely things I'm sure that could be improved on.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I'll follow up with you
Yeah.
guys, we'll get the whole team on an email and figure out where we go.
But I would love to leverage Google, because I know, I see the power of the free training. I know it's great, you know, the transcript learning and the free training is great. And I don't know what else we could leverage that could really help the state with just their boatloads of paperwork.
Yes. I think Splitter, like we talked about it, but we didn't like click and use it.
So that's another issue that they have is some of our documents, like ours that we have are like 80 to 300 pages. And it's like the main information that you would want is on title page. So that would be more of a classification issue because you need to see the title page. Sometimes they don't exist though, which is messier, but
Yeah, if you can still solve for 90%.
just like identifying the title pages, you know, if I have a person actually like scrolling through and they don't even know where the title page is, and then you have these many-to-many relationships, how many schools are in here, which job IDs for each school, which building goes to each school.
Yeah.
Some of them match, some of them don't.
Great.
Yeah. We've
And I
had
think
a
that's-
customer like
I
the
mean,
same.
but in general, this other project that we were working on together, right? Like a lot of the goal of a lot of it, and you're never gonna get 100%.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
if we can get it to 80-90%, and then you only have to deal with a
Exactly.
super small subset, at least then
Yeah.
it's somewhat manageable, right? So
Right.
That was even in invoices and POs of what we were working on, that was the goal, is if we can get it up high enough, then the folks manually, you know, taking that other piece that's just really hard and weird, then, you know, it's much more manageable for them. And all this other stuff we just got rid of for them, right? So it's kind of a deflection strategy, right? To just get it high enough that you can take care of the rest.
Yeah, we had a use case where the POs, purchase orders, and the invoices were coming in together. And because of the fact that they were coming in together, we were processing it as an invoice, so we were getting misleading results. So as soon as we did the splitting and we realized, okay, this is a bucket it's a bundle, it's not an invoice, let's split it. That raised our accuracy quite a bit, and then we were able to like do the same thing, like, okay, recognize this is the same document that's happening again and again, and able to split. So something like a custom splitter might be able to help you, identify the title form. All right. That's pretty much it. Like we've covered the document, we've covered the splitter, and we have training. Like I'm happy to take any questions or specific like use cases that you may have, like as a one-on-one or 1-on-2 or 1-on-3, whatever works, right? We can do that. But basically, that covers most of the content that we wanted you to experience and learn today. I will share this deck so that you get my and Lance's email ID, and also like would have some sort of reference as to what we covered, what we didn't.
You're gonna share the slide next
Yes,
week?
would that be good? Okay.
Just email it out.
Yeah, I'll email it out. Gmail IDs? No. Or the registration ID.
Your registration, we have those emails.
Yeah, I'll send it out to the registration ID. That makes more sense.
Yes.
Yes.
But we'll be hanging out here if you have, any specific questions, and we can follow up on, that issue. But if you want to chat or have other topics or other things, as I mentioned before, Sugandha has a very broad background in just data and analytics overall, so that can cover a the different areas and topics. So we're happy to just hang out and answer questions. Otherwise, we'll give you guys back some time and we'll let you get to your day. But thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for coming. Thank you for making it. I hope it was worthwhile. And I would appreciate some candid feedback so I can make it better next time. With regards to data, I'm happy to talk about marketing analytics if that's relevant to you, like have a follow-up session on that as well. But thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.